2 days before Christmas, in a house in Ellington, Connecticut, a woman's fitness tracker recorded her walking. It logged her movement across the basement. It logged her heart still beating. It kept logging for about an hour. The problem was the story her husband had already told police. He said she had been shot dead before any of that happened. He had an explanation for everything else. He had an intruder. He had a description. He had wounds on his own body and zip ties around his own wrists. What he did not have was any idea that the small plastic band on his wife's wrist had been keeping its own record the entire time. 3 cases, 3 people who told police a story, and 3 machines that quietly told a different one. This is Midnight Faceless Crimes. If you find this kind of thing as unsettling as I do, take a second to like the video and follow the channel. It genuinely helps. None of the 3 men in this video confessed. 2 of them still insist they are innocent today. All 3 were convicted anyway because of something they carried, something they typed, or something the person they loved was wearing. We start in Connecticut. On the morning of December 23, 2015, Richard DaBate called 911 from his home in Ellington, Connecticut, and said a man had broken into his house. He described him carefully. A large man, masked, dressed in camouflage, and he said the man had a distinctive voice. He compared it to the actor Vin Diesel. He said the intruder had tied him up. He said the intruder had stabbed him. He said his wife Connie had come home in the middle of it and the man had shot her. Police arrived to a scene that supported that story. Connie DaBate was dead. Richard DaBate was fastened to a folding chair with zip ties, bleeding from a wound in his abdomen. Connie was 39. She was a mother of 2 boys who were both at school that morning. It was 2 days before Christmas. For a short time, the story held. Then investigators started looking at the scene itself. The zip ties were loose, not the kind of restraint that stops a man from moving. The stab wound was shallow, and it was consistent with a box cutter, which was in the house. Nothing had been taken. There was no sign of forced entry that made sense with a stranger who had picked this house at random on a weekday morning in a quiet Connecticut town. And there was the house itself. It had a modern alarm system, and it logged motion. It logged doors. It logged the ordinary movements of the people who lived there. That system did not record what a home invasion looks like. None of that was conclusive on its own. A defense lawyer can explain any one of those things. Then they got to the wristband. Connie DaBate wore a Fitbit. It was an ordinary fitness tracker, the kind that tens of millions of people were wearing that year without a second thought. It counted her steps. It measured distance. It logged the time of everything it recorded. Richard DaBate had given police a timeline. He had been specific about it. He had said when the intruder arrived, when Connie came home, when she was shot. The Fitbit did not agree. It showed Connie moving around the house for roughly an hour after the moment her husband said she had been killed. It recorded her covering a distance across that property that a dead woman cannot cover. At trial, an expert testified that it was highly unlikely that the device would be off by an hour. That was the piece the case is remembered for, but it was not alone. Prosecutors put together something much larger than one wristband. The alarm system's motion records, both of their cell phones, emails, Facebook activity that morning. Every one of those things was a small clock, running quietly, and every one of them told a version of that morning that did not match his. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Prosecutors called more than 130 witnesses and put in more than 600 pieces of evidence. And then there was why. Richard DaBate had been having an affair for years. His girlfriend was pregnant at the time his wife was killed, and she gave birth to their child afterward. The day before Connie died, he had sent that woman a text message calling her his little love nugget. 5 days after his wife was shot, he made a phone call about her life insurance policy. It was worth $475,000. The prosecutor told the jury that his life was about to collapse and that he had come up with a plan to be the hero of a story he wrote himself. The defense fought it. They pointed to unknown DNA found in the house, including on the gun that killed Connie. They put on a house cleaner who said she may have seen a figure in dark green move past a window. And they attacked the Fitbit itself, arguing that a consumer fitness device is not forensic equipment and should never have been allowed in front of a jury. Richard DaBate took the stand in his own defense and repeated his account. In May of 2022, the jury convicted him on all 3 counts: murder, tampering with evidence, making a false statement to police. In September of that year, he was sentenced to 65 years. He appealed, and part of that appeal was aimed squarely at the wristband. His lawyers argued the data was unreliable and the trial judge was wrong to admit it. In March of 2025, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled. The justices actually agreed that the prosecutor had committed several improprieties at trial, and they described them as troubling. But they upheld the conviction 6-0, and they upheld the Fitbit evidence along with it. Richard DaBate maintains his innocence. What is on the record is this: he built a story with a masked man in it, and he built it carefully enough to survive a first look. And it was taken apart by a plastic band that cost about $100, which nobody in that house had any reason to think about at all. On December 3, 1998, Julie Jensen was found dead in her bed in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. She was 40 years old. There was no obvious cause, no wound, no sign of a struggle. Her husband Mark was in the house. Their 2 young sons were there. Toxicology came back with an answer nobody expected. She had died from ethylene glycol, antifreeze. Mark Jensen's account was that his wife had been deeply depressed for months and that she had poisoned herself. That account was not unreasonable on its face. She had seen a therapist. There was a documented history of depression, and a woman who takes her own life with a household chemical is, unfortunately, not a rare thing. But Julie Jensen had done something before she died that almost nobody does. She had written it down. In the weeks before her death, she gave a sealed letter to a neighbor and told him to hand it to the police if anything happened to her. In it, she wrote that she was suspicious of her husband's recent behavior and that she feared she was going to die soon. She wrote that she would never take her own life because of her children. She also left voicemail messages for the Pleasant Prairie Police Department, saying the same thing while she was still alive to say it. So investigators went to the house and they took the family computer. What they found on it was a search history from the weeks before her death. Someone using that computer had been reading about poisoning, about botulism, about mercury fulminate, about pipe bombs. Someone had visited a page explaining how to reverse the polarity of a swimming pool, and the Jensens had a swimming pool. There was also a motive sitting in plain view. Mark Jensen was involved with another woman. He would go on to marry her. Prosecutors argued something colder than a single act. They said that for months before she died, he had run a campaign against her. Strange phone calls. Pornographic images left at the house and left on his own car at his workplace, staged to look like harassment from an outsider. They argued he was building a version of his wife as unstable and paranoid, so that when she died, the story would already be written. He was charged in 2002. Legal fights over evidence delayed the case for years. In 2008, a jury convicted Mark Jensen of first-degree intentional homicide. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and that is where most cases end. Julie Jensen's letter had been read aloud in that courtroom. Jurors afterward described it as the thing that decided it for them. Her own voice, from 6 years in the ground, naming her husband. But there is a rule in American courts that a defendant has the right to confront the witnesses against him, to cross-examine them, to test what they said. Julie Jensen could not be cross-examined. The appeals worked their way upward for years, and eventually the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that admitting the letter had violated Mark Jensen's Sixth Amendment rights. The conviction was vacated. The sentence was vacated. He was no longer a convicted murderer, and he was released on bond to await a new trial. More than 20 years after Julie Jensen died, the state of Wisconsin had to prove it all over again. This time without her letter. This time without her voicemails. The jury would never hear a word from her. The retrial opened in Kenosha County in January of 2023. What the prosecution built the second case on was largely what had been sitting on that computer. The searches, his emails to the woman he was involved with, the pattern of a man who had spent the autumn of 1998 reading about how to poison someone. The defense argued what it had always argued, that Julie was depressed and disturbed, that she had poisoned herself and pointed at her husband on the way out, that the searches could have been hers, made in preparation. The jury deliberated for about 6 hours. On February 1, 2023, they convicted Mark Jensen of first-degree intentional homicide for the second time. In April, he was sentenced to life without parole again, at 63 years old. His lawyers said afterward that he is innocent and that they would appeal. He has never admitted to it. The prosecutor who tried the case both times said afterward that Julie's words should have been heard and that it was a travesty they were not. But he also made a point of saying that they were not what convicted him. There was, he said, more than enough besides, which is the strange shape of this case. She wrote the letter. She left the messages. She did everything a person could possibly do to be believed after she was gone. And in the end, the courts took her voice out of it entirely and convicted him anyway, on a record he made himself. Anna Walshe was 39 years old. She was a real estate executive, a mother of 3 young boys, and she split her time between Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. on New Year's Eve of 2022. She and her husband Brian had dinner at their home in Cohasset, Massachusetts, with a friend. The friend left at around 1:30 in the morning. Nobody outside that house ever saw Anna Walshe again. She was not reported missing by her family. She was reported missing on January 4th by her employer, when she did not turn up for work. Brian Walshe told police his wife had left in the early hours of New Year's Day to catch a flight to Washington for a work emergency. He said she had taken a ride share to the airport. There was no ride share record. There was no flight. There was no work emergency. In the first days, when Anna Walshe was still officially a missing person and her husband was still officially a worried spouse, he cooperated. He handed over the family's electronic devices so investigators could look through messages for anything that might help find her. That decision is the entire case. Among the devices was his son's iPad. Starting at 4:55 in the morning on January 1st, roughly 3 hours after the friend went home, someone using that iPad began searching the internet. They searched how to stop a body from decomposing. They searched ways to dispose of a dead body. They searched how long before a body starts to smell. They searched how to throw away body parts. And then, at some point in that sequence, they searched whether you can be charged with murder without a body. Over the following days, there were more. Whether bleach can clean blood out of a wood floor. What the best state is for a man to get divorced in, which had been searched a few days before, on December 27th, before anything had happened at all. Read in order. They are not the searches of a man trying to find his wife. They are the searches of a man solving a problem in sequence in real time at a kitchen table in the dark. While those searches were being made, Other records were accumulating on their own. Surveillance cameras at hardware stores recorded Brian Walshe buying cleaning supplies. Mops, buckets, tarps, new rugs. He paid cash. And in a series of dumpsters across eastern Massachusetts, investigators recovered items with blood on them. A hacksaw, a hatchet, rugs, towels, clothing that belonged to her. Testing found DNA matching both Anna and Brian Walshe. What followed was one of the largest searches in recent Massachusetts history. Investigators worked through a transfer station in Peabody, sorting through tons of household waste by hand. They dug at a landfill. They searched woods and marshland around the town where the couple lived. Her body has never been found. It has never been recovered to this day. She has 3 sons. They were 3, 4, and 6 years old when their mother disappeared from that house on New Year's Day. They were in the house that night. Brian Walshe's lawyers understood exactly what the case was, and they fought hard to remove it. They argued that when he consented to a search of the family's devices, he had agreed to let police read messages and nothing more. He had never consented to anyone reading his internet history. They argued that everything that flowed from that first look, including later searches carried out with warrants, was the fruit of an improper search and could not be used. If that argument had won, the case would have lost its spine. It did not win. The court allowed the searches in. There was also a man's life falling apart in the background of all of this. Brian Walshe had already pleaded guilty in 2021 to federal art fraud for selling 2 fake Andy Warhol paintings years earlier. He was still awaiting sentencing on that when his wife disappeared. Prosecutors argued he was under enormous pressure and that he had learned Anna was involved with someone else. Shortly before jury selection began, Brian Walshe changed his plea on 2 of the charges. He admitted to misleading police. He admitted to unlawfully disposing of a human body. That was a calculated move, and it is worth understanding why a defendant does it. By admitting the 2 things the physical evidence proved beyond argument, he took them off the table. The jury would not spend 2 weeks hearing about dumpsters and hacksaws as open questions. He was conceding the cleanup in order to fight the killing. His position was that Anna died and that he panicked, and that everything he did afterward was the crime he was actually guilty of. So the trial that followed was about one question only: first-degree murder, which in Massachusetts requires premeditation. That is what the searches were for. The prosecution used them not to prove he disposed of her, because he had already admitted that. They used them to prove he had thought about it. The search about the best state for a man to divorce in was made on December 27th, 5 days before she died. That one search moved the story backward in time, from a panic to a plan. The trial lasted about 2 weeks. On December 15th, 2025, nearly 3 years after Anna Walshe disappeared, the jury found him guilty of murder in the first degree. In her closing argument, the prosecutor made a point that hung over the whole case. There can be no autopsy without a body. There can be no official cause of death without a body, which is precisely what someone using an iPad in that house had wanted to know at 5 in the morning on the first day of the year. 3 men, 3 stories that were built to survive the first conversation with a police officer, a masked intruder with a memorable voice, a depressed wife who poisoned herself, a woman who left for the airport before dawn. Every one of those stories was aimed at people, at detectives, at neighbors, at juries, and people can be convinced. People can be given a version of events and a reason to believe it. What none of them accounted for was that the story also had to survive the machines. A fitness band that kept counting steps, a home computer that saved what somebody typed into it in 1998, a child's tablet that recorded a search at 5 in the morning. None of those things were watching anybody. That is the part that stays with me. They were not evidence. They were not surveillance. They were just the ordinary background of a household doing what they always did on a day that was not ordinary at all. 2 of these 3 men still say they did not do it. One says he only cleaned up afterward. Not one of them was undone by a confession. They were undone by a record they did not know was being kept. If this is your kind of thing, the channel is Midnight Faceless Crimes, and there is a new one every week. Like the video, follow the channel, and I will see you in the next one.